All right, everyone, settle in, settle in. Let me spin you a yarn, a story about a young fellow with a dream as tall as the mountains themselves. Now, picture this, a quiet little village nestled all snug between these two enormous mountain ranges. It was a peaceful place, but right there in the distance, looming over everything, was Mount Devagiri. Ah, Devagiri. The tallest, the most majestic, and let's be honest, the one that sent a shiver down most folks' spines. The villagers, they had their tales, you see. Whispers of danger, of mystery. Stories of brave souls who dared to challenge its heights. But sadly, precious few ever returned to tell the tale. But our young hero, a boy named Arjun, fear wasn't in his vocabulary when it came to Devagiri. He wasn't scared. He was drawn. Deep down, he felt that mountain wasn't just a cold, rocky giant. No, sir, it was something more. A test, maybe. A calling. A symbol of greatness. Just waiting for someone bold enough to conquer it. Now, Arjun wasn't born with a silver spoon. Not by a long shot. His father was a humble potter, shaping clay with calloused hands. His mother, a kind schoolteacher, sharing knowledge with the village children. They lived simply, and they instilled in Arjun the values of hard work, patience, and always keeping your feet on the ground. But every time young Arjun would get that glint in his eye and talk about climbing Mount Devagiri, his parents would just exchange these gentle smiles. Dreams are wonderful, my boy, they'd say softly, but some dreams are best left admired from a distance. But you know how it is when a dream takes root in your heart? Arjun just couldn't let it go. Years flew by, and by the time Arjun turned 20, he'd been preparing in secret, with a quiet determination. He trained his body, pushing himself harder each day. He devoured every book, every scrap of information he could find about mountaineering, and he saved every single coin he earned by helping out, each penny bringing him closer to his goal. And then, the day dawned. The day he felt ready. He packed his meager bag, just the essentials, a well-worn map that had seen better days, and something far more valuable, an unshakable belief in himself. The beginning of the journey? It was breathtaking. He walked through these lush, green valleys, the air alive with birdsong. He crossed crystal-clear streams that babbled secrets to the ancient stones. It felt like the world itself was cheering him on. I was born for this, he'd whisper to the wind, feeling utterly unstoppable. But the climb was a different beast altogether. Not the gentle slopes of the valleys. The path narrowed, becoming treacherous. The air thinned with every upward step, making each breath a struggle. And the weather? It turned on him. Cruel winds whipped at him, and the sun seemed to vanish behind a curtain of gray. Every muscle in his young body screamed in protest. Breathing became a conscious effort, a task in itself. And each night, huddled in his thin blankets beneath a vast, frozen sky, fear would slither into his mind, chilling him to the very core. Then, it happened. The fall. One evening, after a brutal stretch along a narrow, icy ridge, his foot slipped. His ankle twisted with a sickening crack. The pain? Immediate, sharp, crippling. He cried out, a raw sound swallowed by the vast emptiness. There was no one to hear him. He was utterly alone. He managed to crawl, inch by agonizing inch, towards a small, dark cave nearby. Shivering, broken, and for the first time, that seed of doubt his parents had warned against began to sprout into a thorny vine in his heart. Maybe they were right, he whispered into the cold darkness. Maybe this dream, maybe it's just a foolish fantasy. He stared into the small fire he'd painstakingly managed to build, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. And then, a memory surfaced, a story used to tell him when he was just a boy. Arjun, she'd say, her voice gentle but firm, there are two mountains in life. One is the one you see with your eyes, tall, covered in snow, reaching for the sky. But the other one, that mountain is inside you. It's made of fear, of doubt, of weakness. And if you can find the strength to climb that inner mountain, then no peak in the world will ever be too high for you. That night, something shifted within young Arjun. He made a choice, a silent vow in the cold, lonely cave. He wasn't turning back. Not now. Not after everything he'd endured. He tore strips from his own worn shirt, his hands clumsy with cold and pain, to wrap his swollen ankle. He used his trusty walking stick as a makeshift crutch, leaning heavily on it for support. And step by painful step, he kept going. Days bled into nights. He learned to survive in that harsh, unforgiving landscape. He discovered hidden springs where water trickled, rationing his meager food with grim determination. He learned to read the sky, to anticipate the moods of the mountain. Every challenge he faced, every hardship he overcame, seemed to chip away at his fear and doubt, hardening him, sharpening his resolve, strengthening his spirit. And then, finally, he stood at the base of the final ascent. The summit was right there, so close he could almost reach out and touch it. But so was the storm. The wind howled like a hungry beast, and snow lashed at his face, blinding and relentless. He thought of waiting it out, of seeking shelter until the fury passed. But something deep inside him, that unwavering fire in his heart, whispered, now or never. The final climb was an act of pure will. His body screamed for rest, every muscle burning. His mind begged him to turn back, to seek the warmth and safety below. But the fire in his heart roared louder. And then he made it. He reached the summit. As he stood there, battered and exhausted, the clouds above seemed the universe itself was holding its breath. Below him, a breathtaking sea of white peaks stretched out as far as the eye could see. And all around him, a golden light bathed the world in a surreal glow. He dropped to his knees, not just from the sheer exhaustion that racked his body, but from the weight of everything he had been through, everything he had overcome. He hadn't just climbed a mountain of rock and snow. He had conquered the mountain within himself, silencing the voice that had whispered he couldn't. Weeks later, a figure, leaner and weathered but with a new light in his eyes, returned to his village. No one could believe it. A hush fell over the small community, and then a joyous eruption. The villagers ran to greet him, their faces etched with disbelief and awe. Children stared at him with wide, wonder-filled eyes. And his parents? Tears streamed down their faces, tears of relief, of pride that swelled their hearts to bursting. Arjun was no longer just the dreamer boy who gazed at the distant peaks. He was the one who dared, the one who had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But he never boasted of his achievement. He never spoke much about the dizzying heights or the breathtaking views from the summit. Instead, he spoke of something far more profound. He spoke of resilience, of the quiet strength that lies within each of us. He spoke of believing in yourself, even when the whole world seems to doubt you. He spoke of never giving up, even when every single step feels like an insurmountable obstacle. He used his newfound respect to build a small school right there in his village. A simple place, but one filled with hope. A place where he taught the young boys and girls, not just how to read from books or write their names, but how to truly live, how to face their fears, how to nurture their dreams, no matter how lofty they might seem. Not from dusty textbooks, but from the hard-won lessons of his own life. And when people would ask him, years later, Arjun, what was your greatest achievement? He'd simply smile, a gentle, knowing smile, and say it wasn't reaching the top. It was making the unwavering decision not to stop. So, my friends, the real heart of this story, the lesson we can all carry with us? Success isn't just about having everything you desire or being the first to reach some distant goal. It's about the journey itself, with all its stumbles and hardships. It's about the lessons we learn when we fall and the incredible strength we discover as we rise again. Because the biggest mountain any of us will ever have to climb is the one we carry within ourselves. The mountain of our fears, our doubts, our limitations. And once you find the courage to conquer that inner peak, then, truly, anything becomes possible.